The 49ers earning an interesting pick in the 2023 NFL draft on a recent ESPN mock draft. Well, that pick does belong to the Miami Dolphins, but it's telling about a potential direction the season could go in San Francisco in 2022. And we've got some nominees for the worst trade in 49ers history as we dip into the Locked On 49ers mailbag right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks for making us your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is what we do, even in the off season, except Monday. Happy 4th of July weekend, everybody. Hope you all have a great weekend. Croc and I will not be doing a Monday show, but we'll be back with you after the holiday on Tuesday. Croc, the traveling Crocky family, man. Croc's in California, getting ready to hit the Disneyland. I hope you have some money left over. I hope you saved all this podcast that you've been collecting with your multiple podcasts over the last year, because you're going to dump it all, I think, at Disneyland this weekend, Croc.
Yeah, my wife is definitely trying to make me go broke. So, you know how people say, like, you know, you be single and, you know, you have more money. I get what they're saying now.
Oh, no doubt. Are you kidding me? A wife and multiple children? That is the
I always wonder
to lose all of your money.
I wonder how people go broke being single now. Like, how are you broke?
How is it, like, how much can you go to the club to outpace what a wife and kids could do with your bank account? No. But my wife makes more money than I do, so I can't say anything about that.
Oh, right, yeah. And my wife is she's an RN. She actually starts on the 11th of July. So
there you go. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So get that vacation in out of the way, because it's time to lock in.
Time to lock in. And my gym is about to be built, so got to lock in on that as well. Yeah. So you won't see me traveling. I say that, but then I'm also saying, like, yeah, I'm gonna be at every 49er road game, so we'll see.
Well, you got those free flights too, right? You've got that like year-long pass where you're just jumping on flights all the time.
Yeah. So I don't pay for that. And then anything else, you know, hotel stay, food while I'm away going to a 49er game, you know, it's a write-off. So those are write-offs because we talk about the 49ers for our business.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is our business. And Crocky coming to a city near you, if the 49ers are coming there potentially. Croc, I got to talk about this mock draft, and it's by Matt Miller, who Matt Miller, by the way, is a 49ers fan, I think, or at least he was at some point. I don't see him talking about the 49ers as much as he used to, but
sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you called him fair weather? Well, I don't think he's fair weather here, because it's
not fair weather. That's not what he's. I think it's when it's convenient. I'll say that. Okay.
Well, it's hard because in being a professional, being in the industry, covering the entire league as we do, both of us, Matt Miller, you have I do a 49ers podcast because I grew up a 49ers fan, but I have to separate the fandom from, you know, objective reporting at times too. And being like, you know, I don't want to be super biased with this podcast all the time. So you have to look at things not from so much of a fan's lens. And the more you work in the media, the less, you know, fan-like you become, I think, in a lot of ways too. So it's just hard to hold on to that youthful fandom that maybe I once had, and I'm sure it's the same for him. But what I find interesting about this mock draft by Matt Miller, he's a draft analyst for ESPN now. He has the Miami Dolphins, who own the San Francisco 49ers pick, the final first-round pick in that trade up for Trey Lance from the 2021 draft. That last first-round pick will be in 2023 coming up. So the Miami Dolphins own that pick. He has the Miami Dolphins picking 13th, which would mean the 49ers have a losing record in 2022. And I think we're pretty confident in the 49ers roster overall, but I look at it this way. When I see the 49ers in a mock draft drafting 13th, and maybe this is Matt Miller trying to prove he's not a homer and putting the 49ers with a first-year starting quarterback really high, right? If Trey Lance is bad and the 49ers are bad and the 49ers are sub 500, all we'll be talking about in April, and probably even well before April, more like January, February, March, before we get into, you know, the deep draft season. But if the 49ers aren't good this year, it's going to make, it's not only that, okay, 49ers weren't a playoff team and all of that. The 49ers lose a draft pick that is in the top half of the first round, it also means maybe the Trey Lance didn't play well. There's going to be a lot of questions about this move and questions if it was the right move, if the 49ers aren't picking very high. So I'm not even looking at this mock draft as who went where and whatever. I'm looking at it as there's still a lot of potential for this 49ers team to be really good. It's a really good roster. I think they believe they have a competitive roster and across the board, it's a good roster. But if Trey Lance doesn't hit the ground running, there's going to be a lot of second guessing about this move with the 49ers because of all the picks they gave up. And if those picks are higher, that makes the trade look worse and probably means that Trey Lance didn't play great in his first year as a starter.
Yeah, and the tough thing is, going back to some of our early podcasts about all this, it was get him on the field as soon as possible because the quicker you get him up to speed, the better you are for it in the future. And that includes this season. I think it would have been a lot easier last year to say, oh, okay, 49ers, would have been picking 13th overall, but Trey Lance started the whole year and, oh man, they went 7-10 or, whatever the new roster record is or whatever, but they went 7-10 and okay, Trey Lance, he's trending up and heading in the right direction. Well, now after being, a year removed from that and going to the NFC Championship game, there is a lot of pressure to hit the ground running with Trey Lance and be really good right away. And, 49ers picking 13th Miami Dolphins, that would not be a great situation, not just for the 49ers, but for Trey Lance as well. And it's tough because I see both sides of it. One side of it, I see, well, you were just in the NFC Championship game and you moved up for quarterback that played in games that helped you get there. And, well, you got, Trey Lance, and now it's like, well, we don't know exactly what he is heading into year 3 of his rookie deal. So all those things are really tough. But I don't know. I feel like 49ers, they kind of made their bed, and now they just have to make sure, do whatever they can to get the best results. And obviously that's what they're going to do.
Right. And it's a tough situation to be in because it's a sliding scale. The higher the 49ers pick is that they earned, the worse the trade looks in retrospect. But at the same time, you shouldn't be surprised if Trey Lance has some struggles as a young guy who's 21 years old. And I think he just turned 22 actually now, right? Because he turned 21 right after the draft last year at some point. Born in the year 2022. Yeah, so he's turning 22. He just turned 22. But again, with his relative inexperience, there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some growing pains, and that shouldn't be surprising. So if
I told you the 49ers went 7-10, with Trey Lance and he started every game, what do you think your thoughts are? Not really knowing the context within it or whatnot, but 7-10, Trey Lance's first year as a starter. Would you say that, and we're removing everything else, they were just in the NFC Championship game, would that be a quote unquote, I don't even want to say successful, but would you be optimistic about where he's heading? Because you look at Josh Allen, his rookie year, 6-10, right? Like they missed the playoffs, and a lot of these other quarterbacks, we saw what they were as rookies. None of them were in the playoffs except for Mac Jones. And even then he was limping into the playoffs with his play. So, is it, well, Trey Lance, you just don't get that opportunity and 7-10 is a failure and it's a bad trade? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think 7-10 would be a huge disappointment for most 49ers fans. And I think I would expect more than 7-10, even for a first-year starter, just because of how talented he is and just because of what Kyle Shanahan should be able to draw up. And I think those fans out there that are sort of Jimmy Garoppolo haters, right? They would think that it was all Shanahan, all the running game, all the defense. In that case, you should be able to plug in anybody. So that means Trey Lance is worse and potentially a lot worse than Jimmy Garoppolo. And that's not going to be a good situation. That's not going to be a good vibe. And it's hard to know what it looked like because there'll be more of a feel to it because we'll see all the games. We'll see how he plays. Is he a complete disaster still late in the season? Didn't learn from mistakes earlier in the season, that kind of thing, right? But if he starts out, oh man, okay, rookie mistakes, they lose some games, gets better as the season goes along. It's like, okay, he's there. That was his his season to sort of make all those mistakes, and he learned from them and he got better. And the trajectory is that, okay, he's going to be better next year. Niners going to be fine. But if it's not looking good and that'll be a long season, that'll be a disappointing season. And there's going to be a ton of questions next year. And I would expect that's the hard part in this is just when you remove yourself from, take the names out, take the team name out, take the quarterback's name out. We're not even talking about Trey Lance. We're just talking about, okay, Team A over here has a first-year starting quarterback. They might not be a playoff team. That's a realistic thing that happens. We just talked about it.
More times than not, you would think that a rookie quarterback is not going to the playoffs.
Yes. So in that way, you shouldn't be too shocked by it, but I think it would be a massive disappointment. The higher the 49ers pick is that Miami is spending in the 2023 draft, I think the bigger problem the 49ers will have on their hands, whether or not Trey Lance ends up being a good quarterback in the future, that would be a bad look. And you would hope, and I think most 49ers fans would hope, that just the talent and seeing what, knowing that Jimmy Garoppolo was, I love the Daniel Jeremiah term he uses with quarterbacks. Are you the truck or the trailer? And just because you're a trailer doesn't mean you can't win, which is what we've seen. But clearly Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been the truck. He hasn't been the thing driving the team, right, to all those wins, even though he's been good and they've won with him. You would think that the 49ers would be able to scheme things up, run the ball a lot, play a lot of good defense, and still be in most every game as long as the quarterback position isn't really, really bad. And so that's where it worries me if they are drafting in the top half of the first round, that maybe Trey Lance is further away than we all hope.
Well, not my issue with that, but I think just me kind of using what I've seen from Jimmy Garoppolo and some of the things that he's done to lead to wins, there are a lot of times where he makes a key throw in the moment, whether it keeps the drive going or, keeps the 49ers on the field, whatever it is. And I think that's the hard part to factor in to his wins and losses, right? Because if you just look at his numbers overall, it's not like great. It's not earth-shattering or anything. And it's how is it resulting in wins? But it's those little throws. And I think for Trey Lance coming in, those are the little throws he's going to have to make. And I think that makes the difference between a 7-10 team and a 10-7 team. Like, is he able to make these throws here and there in that moment that we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo make, regardless of whatever Jimmy does leading up to that point?
That's a really good point. I want to talk a little bit more about that and what exactly it should look like with Trey Lance and what the important things that we'll be looking for in the 2021 season or 2022 season with Trey Lance as a full-time quarterback of the 49ers, if he is indeed full-time quarterback of the 49ers, as we expect, and Jimmy Garoppolo is either traded or released at some point before training camp, which is not 100% guarantee still at this point. And we're getting to some of the listener mailbag as well. A couple of nominees for the worst trades in 49ers history. But I want to let the folks out there know about Bet Online, your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information this season. You can bet on a ton of 49ers futures right now. You can bet for Trey Lance for MVP and get some pretty darn good odds on it. You can bet the 49ers as NFC West champs, as Super Bowl champs, Kyle Shanahan Coach of the Year, right? You can bet on all of those things. Nick Bosa sacks at Bet Online. Find the latest sports developments, league reviews, including Major League Baseball all season long, golf, boxing, MMA, celebrity boxing matches from former NFL running backs. If that is your bag as well, Bet Online, your continued source for all sports wagering, and not just wagering, but information this season, live betting, esports, scores, and more. So get over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action at Bet Online, where the game starts. Croc, I got to ask you this really quick. Are you still, because I feel like every week it kind of changes what I feel about Jimmy Garoppolo, where he's going to end up, what his value is, if he's going to be on the 49ers roster when camp breaks on July 26th, I believe it is. We'll be just a few short weeks away when we reconvene here on Tuesday after the holiday, by the way. We're getting pretty close to camp time in July. Jimmy G, in training camp with the 49ers? Because I was like, he's 100% not going to be in camp. But I don't know if it's them just trying to get that trade done. Because there's always a whisper that's like, maybe he will actually go to camp with the 49ers. I don't buy it, but it's not 100% anymore. It's like 90%, I think, for me right now.
I don't think he'll be in camp. But yeah, I'm with you. It's not anything that's 100% set in stone. I definitely think you can find scenarios where he is there. What's the best way to go about it? I think that's the part. It feels like the team is trending towards it being Trey Lance's team. And does Jimmy Garoppolo, getting healthy, and does that change things? Does that throw a wrench into your plans in the development of Trey Lance? And because if that happens, if Jimmy Garoppolo does report, then you have to make it a competition. And do you want to make it a competition between Trey Lance? I get some people, let the best man win. Let the best man win the job, and that's cool. But every time Jimmy takes a throw with first team, that's taking away from the growth and development of Trey Lance.
And it's funny because it ties into what we were just talking about, because the most important thing for the franchise is the development of Trey Lance, and you got to get him there. But if the 49ers are sitting back thinking, what if he's not all the way there? And we already went through this in 2021 in Trey Lance's rookie year. It's like, okay, are we trying to win now with the veteran quarterback? Or are we trying to develop the rookie quarterback? And so if you let Jimmy sneak in there and play, it helps knowing that you have the best possible quarterback there and you have a fallback option, and you're trying to be that playoff team and you're trying to win, which clearly they are, all by the argument that both quarterbacks would help you do that. But it's too important, because then what do you do? Then the next year we're in the same conversation. Is Trey Lance the guy? I don't know. He should be able to beat out Jimmy G to me in training camp, even if he's got his raw, some raw pieces to his game, which he no doubt will have. I think he should still be able to beat out Jimmy Garoppolo if you're the number 3 overall pick by your second year as a quarterback, right? So that's where this is all fascinating, is the sliding scale of how good the 49ers are going to be with Trey Lance and his development, and what that will end up looking like to fans after this season is over. If the 49ers are a playoff team, they're fine. It doesn't matter about the trade and the first round picks you gave up for it, because if you get a legitimate, like not even star level, but just really good NFL starting quarterback, it's really hard to overpay for that if he's, among the top half of the league and he's a lot better than Jimmy Garoppolo. But if you're just getting the same results even than they got with Jimmy G, then what are you doing? Why are you spending all that in trade for a quarterback when you had a guy already in house? So I think it's just, there's gonna be a lot of questions.
Well, you get cheaper. You got cheaper at the position, so there's that. But I do have a couple of things. Talking to my buddy Greg Pinelli, shout out to my guy Greg Pinelli Passing Academy.
The QB, he made Croc look really good in his QB Pro Day, so he's got to be good at his job.
I feel like I would look good with or without him, but because I'm just an athlete. But it was great, man. First of all the little things that go into throwing a football, and he would tell me something, and he's like, "Hey, you're releasing it here, and then your wrist isn't locked." And then so he's like, "Do this, and then coil your shoulder this way and let it go." And then just boom, you can see like the change in the way the ball comes out my hand. I'm like, wow. Like, just imagine if I was getting this every day. Like, imagine if I was training on this, 5 days a week or 4 days a week, however much these guys train. But anyways, we were talking about Trey Lance.
And to that point, I want to say this before I forget. Sorry to interrupt you. Not only just throwing the football too, but like all the other things that go into play in quarterback in the NFL. And I talked about this before, because you look at Garoppolo's stats and you look at some interceptions and some bad throws here. All we see as fans and analysts, for the most part, is what happens from snap to the end of the play, right? And we have the statistics that back it up. But there's so much that goes into playing NFL quarterback that happens from Tuesday to Saturday during the week that we don't get a chance to see. That happens pre-snap. Sometimes it's getting in the right play, and the right play might be a run play that Garoppolo is really good at, right? And so there's some things that we don't even see that you say, Trey Lance is going to be better than Jimmy G because he's bigger, got a better arm, more athletic. He's going to make throws that Jimmy G couldn't make, right? But that's not what playing NFL quarterback is all about. It helps, but it's still a position that's played from the neck up. And so it's hard to know exactly how important Jimmy G is to the 49ers Tuesday through Saturday, getting ready for those games on Sunday, and even pre-snap, because all we see is the results post-snap. So I do want to say that. And that's where there's going to be a lot of growth with Trey Lance. And of course, he's still working on his throwing motion on top of it.
And that goes into kind of my next point, which is, and some people have, like, they discount a guy like Nate Sudfeld being on the roster. And they just back up, whatever. And I've said there's a scenario where a Nate Sudfeld just in a drop back setting can look better than Trey Lance right now. Like, there's still a lot that Trey Lance is trying to process in the sense of kind of what he's seeing from the defense, what to expect from an offense, as opposed to a guy that's been in the league for a while. So, all the tools and everything like that might help him get by. And I asked Greg about this. And I said, hey, let's say Nate Sudfeld if you just watch 7-on-7 49ers, there's a chance Sudfeld, it just looks better, right? And I said, when you are Trey Lance and you know that you have this kind of second reaction throw ability, is there a way to where that evens the playing field out, right? Because you can't really account for that in practice or in 7-on-7, right? Like there's this element where Trey Lance is kind of almost playing with one hand tied behind his back because he right now at this place in his development isn't necessarily that, oh, I'm just going to drop it back, get the ball in my hands quick. I know exactly where to go. Like he's just not there yet. And there's going to, that part of his game is going to take time to get down. But I asked Greg, can he make up for that with just playmaking ability? And we saw examples of that against Houston, right? Or we'll say even Cardinals game, right? First play of the game, he drops back. There's a free runner off the edge. He steps up, he takes off and picks up 15 yards. Well, you can't really display that in 7-on-7 where you just kind of stand there. Maybe he's slow with a read or whatever. But, okay, I'm able to overcome that with my legs. Houston Texans backed up against the goal line. They have double slants on. Doesn't like quite what he sees. A safety comes down, and he does a really good job of, okay, I'm not going to take that. Let me bypass. Okay, move around, move to the right, make a play on the move, right? Then he throws for a first down. So there are certain things in practice even that might not be the most ideal, but because of his playmaking ability, he's still able to make plays. And that was something that Josh Allen, and again, we're talking about Greg. Greg is really close with Josh Allen. The entire, he's been a part of his growth and development as well. And he talked about Josh Allen early on. He was just out there, and it's like, well, they want him to be a robot, right? Like they want him to be that great 7-on-7 pocket quarterback. And it's like, man, that's not really where I am. So year 2, you start to see some development, but a big part of it was just go out there and play. Don't worry about making the perfect read. Don't worry about having to be this robotic quarterback. Don't worry about being Tom Brady. Just go out there, make throws, make plays, and we'll continue to add on to what you're doing from there. And I think that's part of the development that we've seen. A big part of it, though, is it sounds like the handling of a quarterback that needs to develop, but also has these other skills.
And you brought up Nate Sudfeld, and I think that's part of why they guaranteed him a couple $1 million and why he's the 49ers backup quarterback once Jimmy's gone is because he's been in the offense. And, if he knows how to run the offense and can get the ball out when he hits his back foot, and that's something that Trey Lance can learn from. And he's been in the offense, he was with Scangarello before he came over to the 49ers, right, in Philadelphia. So he's been with the terminology with the offense for a while now. And so that helps a young quarterback. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why the 49ers like Sudfeld as a backup quarterback too, because he's non-threatening. He's not going to beat out Trey Lance for a starting job, but he knows where to go with the ball. And he knows the offense, and that's what you need in a backup quarterback. So, and we'll see if he is forced to play, if he can play for the 49ers too. But yeah, it's a good point that if you went and watched these guys in 7-on-7, where it negates some of the, the second reaction plays from Trey Lance, you might not be able to tell the difference who the starter is right away until Trey Lance gets deeper and deeper into his NFL career and gets those reps. But he needs those reps, which is why Jimmy G can't be around, right? And hopefully the 49ers pick that the Miami Dolphins are spending is a lot better than pick 13 in the first round in 2023. Locked On 49ers mailbag next. A couple of nominees for the worst trades in 49ers history. I do want to thank everybody for making Locked On 49ers, by the way, your first listen every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Croc on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast and all the great stuff happening on the Locked On NFL channel here. There is no off season. There is no break in the off season for us, except for on the 4th of July. We're not going to have a podcast. But aside from that, the off season is in season for the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, Croc, how about these nominees for the worst trades in 49ers history? We got to go all the way back to the O.J. Simpson trade here. According to, this is Cronzy that brought up the OJ trade. And I do remember because and we were doing our all-time draft, OJ Simpson was a name that pops up and it's like, dude, OJ Simpson, one of the best running backs of all time, right? But when he was at the 49ers, he was like looking like he had arthritis in every joint in his body. He's tiptoeing around. It's like, that wasn't the OJ, that wasn't the juice from USC. That wasn't the Buffalo Bills version of OJ Simpson that the 49ers ended up with. And Cronzy says, just catching up on the June 30 pod, worst trade in 49ers history. How about an injured and arthritic O.J. Simpson for the 1978 second and third round picks, 1979 first-round pick, which became the number 1 overall pick in the draft,
Wow.
and a 4th-round pick, and a 2nd-round pick in 1980. And all O.J. Simpson ever gave him was 1,053 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2 seasons. So averaged about 500 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2 seasons with the 49ers in the late 70s there. Broken down O.J. Simpson. I mean, you gave up what became the number 1 overall pick, and you were bad because you had a bad running back because you had O.J. Simpson, too.
What years did he play with the Niners?
It was 78 and 79, I believe.
So was 79, was that Montana's rookie year?
So the trade happened pre-Bill Walsh, yeah. And then 79 was the year that Joe Montana was drafted by Bill Walsh.
That just sounds like Joe Montana and O.J. Simpson. They played together. Like, that sounds kind of wild.
Oh, they were yeah, I don't really ever put that together. They were on the same roster together in 1979. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
When was Ronnie Lott drafted? 80, 81?
81, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think? Number 1 overall pick.
That's bad.
That's really bad.
You get 500 yards a season and 2 touchdowns a year, and you gave up all that. That's trash. That might be the worst. Now, again, and we know the results of it, right? The results of it was OJ was trash. So
right.
now someone brought up Trey Lance, and it's like, well, in theory, like, I see how you could think, like, man, that potentially could be the worst. But if he ends up being good, then you're not going to care what you gave up. OJ is like, we know the results. It was 500 yards a year, and they gave up a ton to get him. Like, that's a lot.
How about this, though? A lot. The reason why that trade isn't brought up as much is because of the hindsight of it. The Herschel Walker trade's always brought up because of what kind of a team Jimmy Johnson was able to build with those picks for the Dallas Cowboys. The pick that was utilized by the Buffalo Bills with the number 1 selection in that 1979 draft was Tom Cousino. That doesn't ring out to NFL fans, right? You know why? They drafted a guy with the number 1 overall pick that instead of playing for the Bills, he went to the CFL.
Really?
He went to play in the Canadian Football League for Montreal instead of the Buffalo Bills. So that's why we don't hear about that trade. Because, if they drafted Dan Marino or something, a Hall of Fame quarterback would have been like, oh, man, okay, look how bad the 49ers screwed up that draft. If they drafted Bruce Smith, right, then we'd be talking about it. But instead, they drafted Tom Cousino that went and played in the CFL. So that's the other part of it is the hindsight aspect of all this stuff.
Do you not get that pick back? I mean, like, okay, I spent the 1st round pick on this guy. Because isn't it in baseball, it's like if something happens, you get to regroup that pick again, or something along the lines?
I think you get like a comp pick, but you don't get the number 1 pick. And that's what happened here, too. Hold on. I got to go further down this article about Tom Cousino because I went into a little rabbit hole right before we went on the air. So when Cousino returned to the NFL, the Bills were able to obtain the 14th overall pick in the 1983 draft, plus a pair of picks in 1984 from the Cleveland Browns, who signed Cousino. So it wasn't like they were given those picks, but Cousino had to come back, and I guess they had his rights. So that's how they got the picks for it. That's the way it looks. So they would have gotten nothing, I think, if he didn't come back to play in the NFL. So here we go. But you got it. So that pick ended up becoming Jim Kelly, who was the 14th overall pick in 1983 in that classic 1983 draft with Jim Kelly and Dan Marino and John Elway and all those guys. So they did it. So actually that pick did end up becoming Jim Kelly for the Bills.
John Elway. There was something weird with him too, right? Like, did he get drafted to the Colts? And I'm not going to play for the Colts.
Yeah, he pulled the Eli Manning before Eli Manning did, basically.
But was going to a different sport, if I remember correctly, going to baseball, right?
Well, he had that. I don't think he was ever going to, but I think he was able to threaten it just because he had that in his back pocket.
So did they trade him to Denver?
They ended up doing a trade. I think it was very similar to what happened with Eli Manning with the Giants and the Chargers. How about this one, though? This is another good one, Croc. And this is going to be close to your heart because this is a Team Croc draftee in our all-time 49ers draft that was really fun that you guys got to check out our 4-part series that we finished up this Wednesday. Tim says, just listen to the latest pod. My nominee for worst trade in 49ers history is the trade that sent Terrell Owens to Philadelphia. Disgruntled or not, the return SF got for a top 5 all-time receiver in his prime was pathetic. And
was it a 3rd round pick?
I think it was a 5th round pick. Hold on. I think it was a 5th round pick and like Pulley Bantacane or something like that. Was it the Brandon Whiting? Was it Brandon Whiting or Pulley Bantacane? Now I'm drawing a blank on that trade. I thought I remembered it, but I'm going to look it up real quick just to make sure.
I forgot he even got traded. It was something weird because it was like you knew something was about to happen. You knew he was on the move. He did not want to play with Jeff Garcia. I think he was like questioning his sexuality and stuff.
Yeah, it was a bad situation, right? And his value was just tanked because of that. And nope, that's not it. Let me.
He was taking jabs at everybody on his way out. I think he took jabs at Mariucci, and then wasn't he supposed to get traded to the Ravens? And there was a lot of stuff going on there.
There was a ton of stuff going on about that. Let's see here. So Owens in 2000. So he was okay. The Niners claimed Owens' agent had missed the deadline to void the final years of his contract, hence making him a free agent for 2004, which subsequently resulted in San Francisco attempting to trade him to the Baltimore Ravens for a second-round pick. But the NFLPA was brought in to hear grievances, but the 49ers, Ravens, and Eagles, with whom Owens had already negotiated a 3-year contract, agreed to a new settlement. So there was a dispute about his rights, if the 49ers even had his rights. So they didn't really have like a full-on, he's under contract with us, because there was an opt-out in his contract. So what ended up happening was a 3-team deal. Owens went to the Philadelphia Eagles. Baltimore got its second-round pick back, so that trade was undone that the Niners had figured out with the Ravens. And then the Eagles gave up a 5th-round pick and defensive end Brandon Whiting. That was the trade.
Okay, so you were right.
Whiting in a 5th.
Wow. Yeah. But it was a mess. I remember. I remember all that. I just remember it being a mess, and I was like, okay, he's going to Baltimore, and then he wasn't. Then he was going to Philadelphia, and again, the things that he was saying on the way out, I was like, yeah, that's
a bummer. If you had a deal worked out that it was going to be a second-round pick that became a 5th and Brandon Whiting, like that's a pretty big gap in compensation too.
Yeah. The 49ers didn't win that. And then, the 49ers were so bad after that. They ended up losing Jeff Garcia anyways, which I thought that was the whole point of getting rid of Terrell Owens, was because you want to make Jeff Garcia feel more comfortable. And then it's like, well, nope, we're getting rid of Garcia too. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Then that's how you end up with Tim Rattay and Kenny Pickett or Cody Pickett or whatever, and all these other guys.
And ended up with the number 1 overall pick. Multiple years later, they were still bad in 2005, getting the 1st overall pick. So like that was a dark time post Bill Walsh. Remember when Bill Walsh came back to run the team and, traded out of the number 3 pick, and they got extra 1st rounders, and they were getting, Julian Petersons of the world. Like, okay, the 49ers are going to be back. And then again, after that, it was just a dark period in the early 2000s post Walsh's return. That was like, once Walsh wasn't involved anymore, it was like they were just not run well for a while. And eventually Scott McCloughan came in, got him some pieces. Then Harbaugh shows up and started to win with those pieces. It was a dark time and a poorly run organization for a while there in the early 2000s.
Julian Peterson, they had 2 first-round picks that year. Ahmad Plummer?
Yep, Plummer and Peterson. I remember this clear as day because everyone, including me, thought the Niners were going to draft the quarterback from Marshall, Randy Moss's quarterback.
Byron Leftwich.
No. Before that.
Chad Pennington.
Chad Pennington. Everyone thought it was going to be Chad Pennington in the 1st round of the draft. The Niners had the 3rd pick that they traded with, I think it was Washington, because Washington ended up with LeVar Arrington and Courtney Brown, I think, at the top. No, Courtney Brown went to the Browns, and Washington ended up with pick 2 and 3 and drafted Arrington and like Chris Samuel or something like that. Is that what it was? I don't know. I remember Washington had those like 2 early back-to-back picks. Niners traded back, had 2 1st rounders. Everyone thought it was going to be Chad Pennington. It was Julian Peterson and then Ahmad Plummer. Then they got Jason Webster in the 2nd round. I think they had a couple of seconds and got somebody else in the 2nd round too. But yeah.
And we're digging deep on this episode, man.
Yeah.
I guess this is the off-season talk. But
another member of Team Crocker, by the way, Julian Peterson. That was a nice pick by you.
Yeah. Man, dude's all muscled up. I wonder what he's doing now. Julian Peterson, that was a good football player.
He he'd have been such a good fit in today's NFL.
Oh
man,
yeah,
because of his ability to blitz, his ability to cover. I mean, he was a chess piece, man. That he was a really underrated player on some bad
he.
teams.
When I was looking at his numbers before I drafted him into my all-time 49er team, it's crazy how, obviously he was really good for the 49ers, but his sack numbers went up big time, like the next 2 years with Seattle. So
Yeah, he had
like,
10
what were they doing?
sacks. Yeah, he had so like there was different years where he had like a bunch of passes defensed with the 49ers when he's more off ball, but he still had a 7-sack season with the Niners. And then he went to Seattle and was a 10-sack guy because they used him more off the edge. And which is, I think, would have been like sort of a 3-4 outside linebacker, like a really multiple scheme that the Patriots run, or back in the Blitzburg days, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think those were the perfect teams for him. I think just using him as a pure off-ball linebacker negated some of his ability with the 49ers. He might have even had a better career if he went to a team like the Steelers right off the bat, just because I think they would have used him a little bit better.
Yeah, he was a long athlete.
Yeah.
Strong. Man. Yeah, I would love to see him playing to this day.
He could cover tight ends too. He's a really good player. All right, fantastic stuff. Thanks everybody for all the questions. We always see all your questions when you're tagging us on Twitter or you're commenting on YouTube. We always appreciate you. Thanks for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. Everybody have a safe holiday. Croc, I hope you still have some money when you come back from Disneyland. I saw Pickle creeping around in the background there. She's no doubt, I'm sure, excited, right, to hit the rides at Disney.
Oh yeah.
The other, what's the other place you're going to?
California Adventures.
Okay. Oh, you're doing it up. You're gonna be exhausted.
It's kind of that time of the year. It's the summer, and you do a lot of different things with the family and stuff. And I just got to remember it's for them, and making memories and things like that. And I just hope they have a good time, because it's definitely not cheap.
That's what it's all about. All right. Good dad, Eric Crocker. Everybody have a great holiday weekend. We'll be back with you Tuesday right here. Locked On 49ers.